G'day, welcome to Navadia. This is the first of 2 videos on this channel on the fallout from the interview with John. After these 2 videos, please know that I won't be covering this situation again unless I feel you need an update, as I don't want to make this channel into a drama one, and frankly, I'm sick of talking about him. As I said last week, I don't want to milk this controversy. John has gone through a pretty rough time over the past few weeks, so I also want to respect that. While I recognise he's made his bed, I'm not actually without compassion for him. It's quite possible he's lost or is about to lose at least a year's worth of work. This convention was his passion project and is now crumbling around him. Although he's reaping what he's sowed, he is a human who, I hope, knows they've done a massive mistake. When people are emotional, they do strange things. Keep that in the back of your mind as you watch what I'm about to show you, and remember, he is human. I genuinely mean that. I do not suggest that you see him out on social media and harass him. If you do, it is not with my approval. With that out of the way, I will be able to establish a pattern of behaviour before his interview with me, where he seems to treat people with blatant disrespect. For all of my claims, I will link my sources in the description below, as well as a playlist of all of the videos I have found surrounding the controversy. If I am unable to link sources, I will link the person I got the information from if you want to confirm anything with them. Also, due to international dates and 1,000 things going on at the one time, slight discrepancies in timeline may happen, and for that, I apologise. As you can see in these screenshots, anyone who gives John the slightest pushback is met with dismissal and disdain. For example, in these emails between John and David, he says,
"I take exception to you being the advisor here. How many events have you organised?"
A big thank you to Bad Tempered Badger for your help. Please subscribe to his channel. By the way, he's only voicing John's contributions. He is not involved in any way, and he is neither condoning nor condemning John Richards. In situations like this, a friendly rivalry can help boost sales and improve the overall quality of events due to competition. However, any help that David could give John was dismissed. He makes light of David's perceived lack of experience in event management. I'm fairly sure that this is John's first event. John claims that he has helped organise events in the past, but the evidence suggests it has been in a lower management tier or contained to a very specific role. For example, he may have been in control of fundraising for prior events, which would not have had anything to do with security and policy making. I believe this due to fundamental oversights he has made over the past year that would seem obvious to experienced event organisers, such as a lack of safety protocols and a lack of understanding of how important they are. I could be wrong, but it is heavily implied in his video response to Rachel Oates, where he is asking her for help around safeguarding policies. An experienced event manager would know how to write a safeguarding policy or have a person on their team who did and wouldn't need to ask a random person on the internet for help. The fact that he keeps using the policy review from the Anne Craft Trust as a shield when asked about implementation points to a fundamental lack of event management experience. The appropriate response would be either a detailed description of the protocol or an honest admission that one is being devised. Not, "Look how amazing this company thinks my policy is." He also disregarded concerns about his behaviour towards Shannon when he invited himself over to her Christmas lunch. I will admit I did see it was intended to be a joke, and I believe the vast majority of the audience did too, but we didn't think it was very funny. Instead of introspection, John places the fault on the audience in this bit here, where he said,
"Sensible-minded individuals would have recognised that my inviting myself to Shannon's for Christmas lunch was not intended to be taken seriously. Why don't YouTube viewers have a sense of humour? She's in Canada, for fuck's sake."
The adage, "every joke has a kernel of truth," applies in this situation because it's not about being a joke, it's about the underlying truth that makes the joke supposedly funny. Clearly the audience wasn't laughing along with him, and there must have been a reason why. He also accuses David's audience of having suspicious minds who make
wild assumptions and jumping to silly conclusions
when we raise genuine concerns about his conference. He then deflects the questions into a non sequitur by going on to talk about how he's fought against harms done by religion. He either can't or refuses to understand why we don't trust him to implement his policy. He then accuses David of not wanting balance by stating,
"You publish my ex-business partner's drunken interview, but won't allow me on your channel. That sounds fair. Brackets, real sarcasm, close brackets."
Considering that Shannon, who has a significantly larger audience than David, had only very recently interviewed John, it would not have been necessary. He also states,
"In other words, you are content to allow an out-of-date impression to fester and not update your viewers with the true situation. This is gutter journalism."
Here he is accusing David of being unprofessional. The irony is not lost on me here. You also have the video I referred to earlier that he did to address Rachel Oates. He talked down to her and gives everyone the impression he's talking to a child. For brevity's sake, I won't talk too much about it, but I will link it in the description below. I won't insult your intelligence as to why I think this is a perfect example of his general attitude. I will also point you to his response to Hemant Mehta's article on Lance's behaviour with David during that fateful interview. Link, of course, is in the description below. In just a few interactions with John, I see a consistent pattern of arrogance, dismissal, unprofessionalism, thin skin, lack of self-reflection, and a refusal to learn. Of course, you may come to different conclusions. Going off this background information, let's talk about the immediate fallout after the interview. By the time we finished the interview, it was about 11:30 p.m. for John. He had mentioned he was tired and past his bedtime before the stream started. However, he was still on Twitter defending himself 3 hours after the interview. Shannon Q on Twitter wrote a very good thread outlining her impressions of the interview here. For those who like to listen, I will get the lovely Shannon to read this for you.
Hi, John Richards. I've been contemplating why your chat with Navardia didn't sit well. I can sum it up thus. When you say, we take all accusations of sexual misconduct seriously, while also saying, unless you've been convicted, you're okay, it seems disingenuous. You simultaneously send a message that it is serious and also that you determine when it is. You have people in attendance who are potentially being honored who have these allegations. However, in their case, you say it isn't serious. You've made yourself the judge. You deemed it okay in those cases. You asked many times, were you there? In all likelihood, you won't be there, nor will anyone if and when it does happen at your event. Why should anyone trust you would hold differing standards? When it's someone you know, you've demonstrated your burden for deeming it legitimate is different. That's the issue. You demonstrate and defend your personal bias. When questioned by women who are legitimately concerned, you've displayed condescension and dismissal to Rachel Oates and now to Navardia. Yet you don't even seem to recognize it, and it's perplexing to me that you don't. I'm about to go to bed, and I need to think about this more, but I implore you to think about what I just said. This isn't a joke. I'm not a reactionary, and your communication style lends to that of someone who is dismissive of legitimate concern.
John then replies with the following.
Okay, Shannon, let's suppose you have sexual misconduct allegations levied at you. Not charges, not convictions, just allegations. But, nevertheless, I bar you from attending my event. You would be right to sue me for victimization, wouldn't you?
This is a consistent pattern. You could turn it into a drinking game if you wish, but I would request that you use water. I do care about you and I genuinely don't want anyone in hospital. He's using the lack of a conviction as a defense against allegations. Anyone who recognizes nuance can catch the flaw in his reasoning. We've all done illegal things. Underage drinking, petty theft, jaywalking, checking your phone while driving. All of these things are illegal. However, according to John, we're completely innocent, even though we did those illegal acts. Keep in mind, I'm not equating these two scenarios. One poses an imminent danger to society, and the other one is just a mere nuisance. The risk of having a person free in society who occasionally steals fruit is relatively low for those around them. It's not like the shops are individuals with bodily autonomy. They just lose some money which can be made back from insurance. However, if an abuser runs free because of an oversight of the law, real lives are at stake. People can be scarred for life. Or worse. Keep in mind, David Silverman has been forced to resign from his previous employment because of inappropriate sexual misconduct. While he has not been convicted, he does have accusations from independent parties as well as leaked text messages from Rebecca Vitzman, which suggests that he knew he was complicit in inappropriately touching her. This, however, seems to not be strong enough evidence for John. To be honest, I'm not sure what would be enough evidence for John. When I asked that question in an interview, he made quite the spectacle of avoiding the answer. People make out-of-court deals all the time. It doesn't mean they're innocent. It means that they weren't convicted. If we went by John's standards, over 1,000 Jehovah's Witnesses in Australia alone would be absolved of child sex abuse. For the John behaviour pattern, please feel free to add this to your take a drink criteria. Again, please use water. He's doing something that Eliakai from A Raging Atheist mentioned in a stream. It's called DAVO, and it's an acronym for Deny, Attack, Reverse Victim, and Offender. This is a common tactic of abusers of all stripes, but especially sex offenders. Basically, it is what it says on the tin. The person being accused denies it, attacks their victim, and then reverses the blame onto the victim. In this particular tweet, he doesn't really deny the accusations, but he certainly plays them down. He attacks Shannon by putting her in the hypothetical that she has sexual assault allegations against her. That's in the section,
Okay, Shannon, let's suppose you have sexual misconduct allegations levied at you.
He then goes on to reverse the victim and offender when he says,
Not charges, not convictions, just allegations. But, nevertheless, I bar you from attending my event.
Here, he's making the accuser become the accused because they're stopping the poor thing from going to an event. He literally says,
You would be right to sue me for victimization, wouldn't you?
No, John, she wouldn't. If there was a similar level of evidence against Shannon as there currently is out against David Silverman, organisers would be right to be concerned. Protecting guests from dangerous people is not victimising the accused. However, one might feel that way if the accused happens to be your friend. Eliakai's tweet in response to Shannon's tweet says,
Well said, Shannon. When your ego and desire to protect your friends overrides the concern for your guests and potential fallout to your movement, it's best to examine why that might be. Because if you care enough to organise a conference, you should care enough to protect those who go.
To which John replies,
I love the way you've unilaterally decreed that the speakers are my friends. What is your evidence for that claim? I've only ever met 2 of them.
We don't have absolute proof of this, but we do have some strong evidence to suggest that Lance Gregorchuk and David Silverman are personal friends of John. His impassioned defense alone supports that hypothesis. Also, David Silverman was employed by Atheist Alliance International. This is important to note because a major player at AAI was John Richards. I'm not suggesting anything. Remember, I'm not a skeptic, I'm a conspiracy theorist. On the subject of dubious friends, later on, John did the almost unthinkable. For his defense, he links a Patreon article locked behind a paywall he claimed he didn't realize was there. Ocean's retweet was hilarious.
I don't think I've ever seen anyone address a controversy from behind a paywall before. This guy is amazing. Mr. John Richards, you are a great innovator.
John, you truly are an innovator. My response on a retweet of Ocean's original tweet was, he says he didn't realise that it was behind a paywall. I'm in 2 minds about believing him. He's a proven liar, but he's also a proven extreme technophobe. Either way, not a good look. His response to me was,
I suggest you get a Patreon account. Then you will be able to forget to change the default setting the way I did.
To which I replied, with a link of course, funny that, I already have one. And I don't post anything there if I want to make it public. Patreon content is for patrons only. Don't you think it's interesting that a person who tried to lecture me on how to build a website can't navigate their way around a drop-down menu? Let's move to the article John linked. Accuse me of the genetic fallacy, but I just want to point something out. John's whole argument is based on a book by a teacher who bragged on television in 2009 about caning his students. He was also accused by 2 students for sexual misconduct, but was later cleared of the charges. John claims he knows Simon Waugh, the aforementioned child abuser, and bases his arguments on the experience of this person and equates it to the witch hunt era, because burning someone alive is exactly the same as losing your reputation. In this article as well, John writes,
That does not mean that I think it's all right if you don't get caught. It does not mean that I do not take seriously the testimony of multiple accusers.
This is in direct contradiction to the fact that Lawrence Krauss has had multiple independent sexual assault allegations against him. David Silverman has also got multiple allegations against him, even to the point of losing his job over sexual misconduct in the company where John Richards was a key player. I will link in the description below a stream on the channel The Raging Atheist where they go into depth over Simon Waugh, the author of the book Presumed Guilty. You know, the child abuser. It's a must watch. It's horrendous but gives amazing context. Also, please read the article, which is, of course, linked in the description below. John states,
Although he was declared innocent within 40 minutes, that was the end of his career in education. He wrote the book titled Presumed Guilty and died young. Do you want to live in a world like that?
his framing would seem to imply that his friend died as a result of the accusations. But of course, a 2-second Google search finds that he passed away at 65 years of age due to pancreatic cancer, 4 years after losing his career. While young, he wasn't exactly a spring chicken, and he died of natural causes. Yes, pancreatic cancer can be caused by environmental factors, but can we directly link the accusations of sexual misconduct to his death? While this went down on Twitter, I woke up the day after my interview to multiple tags and direct messages about a tweet by Alex O'Connor, aka Cosmic Skeptic. He wrote an article which I will link in the description below. He formally withdrew from the Anti-Theist International Convention, which was a source of criticism towards him from the community. In said article, Alex explained his decision in detail, citing the interview with me as the straw that broke the camel's back. He refers to that interview on several occasions, so I'm actually thinking it was more the hay bale that broke the camel's back. He explained that he hadn't withdrawn earlier because the tickets to the convention were very expensive and he didn't want to disappoint his fans. He is now offering to refund any tickets to people who wanted to see him at the convention, and they also get a special offer from David Worley from DaveCon. Alex is also speaking there. Shortly after Alex's official withdrawal, another keynote speaker, Stephen Law, followed suit. I have to thank Alex for contacting Stephen for us. A few days after Alex's official withdrawal from the convention, John writes a comment on his blog, and seriously, if I hadn't already told you that I wasn't going to do any more videos on this subject, I would definitely do one on this comment. It deserves its own video. If you want me to, please comment below, but honestly, no guarantees. The response to this article is part of the reason why I don't think John is as misogynistic as people say he is. This is because he uses the same language patterns with Alex as he does with anyone who disagrees with him. For example, he hides behind the suspicious minds excuse in this comment here.
What alarms me is the level of suspicion and the lack of a sense of humour among the current audience of video podcasts.
John, I can assure you our community has an excellent sense of humour. For example, I'm laughing at you because you're surprised that a skeptical community has suspicious minds. His attitude towards Alex also reveals his nature. He explains to Alex's audience,
And yes, I did fired an American. Him. You may have noticed he has not appeared since.
I would assume that Alex's audience would be able to infer that sack meant fired. To me, that clarification would suggest that he thinks Alex's American fans are not too intelligent. Also, I will discuss Lance's next video because there's a bit of an update around him. John brings up the Anne Craft Trust recommendation again in this bit here.
We are all entitled to our opinion, but I don't think I made light of anti-harassment policies with Rachel Oates. I invited Rachel Oates to speak at the ATI convention, but she refused. In fact, our policy has been described by the Anne Craft Trust as more than satisfactory.
My skeptical/conspiracy theorist minds picks up a bit of a sore point with John about Rachel's refusal to go to his convention. John lies again in this bit here about David Worley.
The nominations had to be submitted on a form which triggered an email to me. Sending me a personal email did not qualify. I have seen no nominations or votes for David Worley. I have no certain explanation for this, but I did have to do a complete delete and OS reinstall when my computer got infected during the process. Perhaps they are still in the ether somewhere. If my computer-savvy friend can recover anything, of course David will be inserted into the system, which is now at the judging panel stage. I am pleased and grateful for his interest in our awards.
Now, I'm no computer expert, but I'm relatively sure that emails are stored to a cloud server and not on the actual computer. I must say, Ocean's tweet seems very appropriate here.
I must say, whatever tech gremlins that seem to have a hatred for my tree-hugging pagan self seem to have a passionate flame of disgust for Mr. John Richards. Because of this, I shall make them a burnt offering of ram sticks for keeping me entertained.
John then went full Darvo on me in this part, so take a drink.
I am insulted to have my attitude described as infantile in my conversation with Nevadia. I had to explain to her how the award process works because of her repeated attempts to tar me with the brush of giving an award to David Silverman. That's wrong on 2 counts. Firstly, we don't know who the winners are yet, and secondly, the one person in the world who has no influence over who wins those 8 awards is me. It did get a bit annoying having to explain this over and over again. I'm sorry it took so long.
Let's break this down. Deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. The denial part is where he says,
I am insulted to have my attitude described as infantile in my conversation with Nevadia.
He's denying that his behaviour on my channel was childish. I think most people would disagree with him on that one. He refused to use his lateral thinking skills, which is kind of weird for an ex-science teacher and proclaimed skeptic, to A, understand I was misspeaking, and to B, not be able to distinguish between you as a person and you as a company. He then moves on to attack mode, where he's basically saying I'm an idiot in the section,
It did get a bit annoying having to explain this over and over again. I'm sorry it took so long.
Also, the fact he felt the need to explain the nomination and award process to me is somewhat indicative of his impression of my intellect. While I'm not definitely the smartest person around, I do have a functioning brain. I'm doing a science degree, for goodness sake. He then reverses the victim to the offender by saying,
Because of her repeated attempts to tar me with the brush of giving an award to David Silverman.
yes, I did say that, but I also corrected myself when I realised I'd made a mistake during the stream. He's creating the narrative that he's the poor victim and I am the bully for my repeated faux pas in misnaming a nomination as an award. I can assure you that was not intentional. He also defends his comment regarding the Shannon being in the kitchen by accusing the community, again, of having no sense of humour.
As for my throwaway line to Shannon Q, there was no possibility of me flying across the Atlantic to gatecrash her Christmas lunch. This is ludicrous. Lighten up. And as for in the kitchen, well, for many years, I was the only cook in our household, and I still do my share tonight. I am the Yorkshire pudding chef.
Why he felt it was necessary to mention the Yorkshire pudding, I actually don't know. Now I'm hungry. Please go and read the statement from Cosmic Skeptic and John's response. They are both very interesting reads. Also, while researching this video, I just noticed that Secular World Atheist Alliance International, which has a photo of someone we know quite well as the profile pic, commented on Alex's statement.
Exactly. It's insulting to us non-misogynist males. That's what infuriated me in my interview with the High Priestess.
This also shows a lack of willingness to ask questions. If you have been involved in this community for a while, Shannon Q did a fundraiser for the Church of Sexual Humanism in August to raise money for GRSM students in Kentucky. Anyone who wanted to be ordained into the church was given a title such as High Priestess, High Priest, or whatever religious leader they wanted to be. John just admitted he was infuriated by being interviewed by a GRSM ally. And again, he talks about not being misogynist. He's only just treated myself, Rachel, and Shannon with the utmost contempt. While I said I don't think he's as misogynistic as most people think he is, in my opinion, he's still a misogynist. Ooh, a bit of fangirling happened to me though. Hemant Mehta replied to my tweet where I link Ocean's video. The next day he sent,
What the fuck is happening in your video? Complain, 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 complain.
My response was, yes, that's a fairly common response to that particular point in the interview. Also, just before my stream started, he started to mock Snore. Critical Cripple will confirm this, but the interview gets better. Wait until he tells me I'm not a skeptic. Hemant answers,
One day I hope to love something as much as he loves his awards.
Me too. Me too. So, let's sum up the following days after the interview. Immediately after, John attacked everyone on Twitter using the same defences such as, the Anne Craft Trust likes our policy, the community doesn't have a sense of humour, the public is at fault, I never got a nomination from David, nobody was charged or convicted, Nevadia wants to break the law, I responded to every question, amongst other things. He also called me Mero during that time, which I find to be the most disrespectful thing that he had done. John, you are not my friend. My name is Meredith or Navadia. Just a reminder, dates are a bit fuzzy here due to time differences. The day after the interview, which was Sunday for me, Cosmic Skeptic drops out of the convention and John replies to the statement on the same day. John also posts his Patreon link as a defense. Behind a paywall. Because, yeah. Monday, Stephen Law drops out. 3 days later, John returns to Cosmic Skeptic's post to complain about being addressed by the High Priestess of Random Facts. Other things have occurred as well, which I will address in the next video, because there's some doozies. That's only a taste of what happened. The real bombs are coming next video, so please stay tuned.